Jai Guru, everyone.
Hey, Guru.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Yogananda podcast. We are going through the autobiography of a yogi line by line. I'm here today with Chris and Michael. How are you, two boys?
Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Good,
Fantastic, yeah.
good. No Lauren today with us, but should be back next week. So we are now going through the end of chapter 25. What happened last time, Chris?
So last time we looked at the sibling, what would you call rivalry? We didn't really decide what it was. None of us are psychologists, but we did look at the tit for tat, let's say, between Nalini and Mukunda when they were younger, growing into more adult life. They settled their differences and came together to try to help each other. And one being that Nalini had tried with her husband, her newlywed, to improve her weight, and then nothing worked really. And then she went to Yogananda for help, and went down the more, say, spiritual route with faith, which worked, and got her to a different figure, a plump figure, as they said. So we looked at the plea that Nalini made to Yogananda to make that work, and then the cure itself. And we talked about truth, given that Yogananda, when he made his statement, really that was the ingredients within that was what was needed to change Nalini's physical state from underweight to a plump, healthy figure. So we looked at that in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Chris. So this section starts with my return from Japan, which means that when he went to Japan, before he went, Nalini got a little bit better. And of course, Ananta was very sick. So that means he had two siblings that were unwell before his departure to Japan. So he wanted to escape from that, perhaps, Chris?
My feeling on this, I was wondering what maybe your knowledge on this, Priyank, would be. It feels like it's quite common, especially 100 years ago, to have illnesses that were, once they kind of take place, they could be quite severe, quite serious. Whereas today, in the more modern era of medicine and treatment and detection and things, it's not going to be as common. But I just wondered to see if you had any information.
Just give me a few minutes. I'll go back to my past life library. Mike, I've got I don't know.
That's definitely true. I mean, the numbers of people who died from cholera and from typhoid. I mean, cholera was basically caused by unclean drinking water. And the fact that we have sanitized drinking water these days is something that wasn't the case in many countries. And if you go back 150 years, it wasn't the case in any country. So it's quite an achievement that I mean, there's a reason why the average life expectancy used to be 50 and now we're more like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there definitely would have been some diseases that have been eradicated since then through
That's also true.
Cure and vaccine.
It's quite, like you said, Bryn, it's quite tragic. Like, yeah, he has the vision that his brother will die, and then his sister has typhoid fever, which was also like a death sentence at the time. So,
yeah, it's
shocking.
Tough life. So I've got smallpox and rinderpest, polio, worm disease, yaws, and malaria have been eliminated in many countries since last century, according to AI. So he learned that on returning from Japan, that he learned that Nalini had typhoid fever, and he obviously rushed to her side, and she was extremely emaciated. So perhaps back to her very thin self, maybe. And she was in a coma, which is tough for anyone to come back to see, isn't it? It's interesting to see how Guruji deals with family illness. We're going to go through that a little bit. Chris?
Yeah, we'll see. Everything is karma, all good and bad. things that occur in our lives. But in this sense, I wonder, maybe that might have saved her, that Guruji had been able to work with her to give her that extra weight, because if she was already as thin as she was previously, would the body be able to withstand all the the problems that she had? So to my mind, it's always good to have a little bit extra weight, just because I've seen when people get really sick, even myself, I've had a simple flu probably, and I lost 4 or 5 kilos, and so in just 10 days. But yeah, I mean, I think to myself here that this is maybe somewhat of an aid that Guruji was able to help her previously to get into healthier physical condition compared to what she was previously. So
Yeah, I
you
think
count your blessings when you get them.
yeah, evolutionarily speaking, that our body wants us to, like, our instinct wants us to get bigger. Like our taste buds want us to get fatter, don't they? So then in the harsher times, i.e. winter, we've got some reserves, right? But obviously that we're not in those harsh times. So now we've got to get out of the evolutionary pull. But yeah. So his brother-in-law said, before her mind became confused, she had said, "Oh, if brother Mukunda was here, I would not be faring thus." She's got so much faith in her avatar brother. Why would you not, I suppose? But it got me to thinking, does faith require the physical presence of the person you're venerating, guru or God or whoever? Because I think the three of us have some degree of faith, and we don't have the benefit of having our guru in the physical presence. So it's interesting that Nalini is saying this. It's something to think about for us as well.
We've seen previously when Mukunda, as a young child, was praying by the direction of his mother to Lahiri Mahashai's picture, and the miracle that came about from that healing, that moment. So we know what's possible, let's say, through the power of faith and healing, even on an image, right? So it is interesting to see that, given the context and the environment that Nalini was in, maybe it happened too quickly, or it simply was the karma was just there, and that was the way it was going to be. But yeah, maybe having the faith to pray on the image could save us more, and we should try just everything to maintain this life and so on. But
yeah. In that vein, I've got a print of that picture of Lahiri Mahashaya, seeing as it has magical remedies. I purchased quite a large one, so I'm thinking when my house gets refurbished, I'm thinking about where to put that, where it won't be in the way of other, my wife's fashion tastes and things like that.
Yeah, that's it. The practical considerations that we have to have. There was an ex-devotee, again, I've mentioned her a lot on the podcast. She passed, and I was, in her house, and she used to keep her pictures of the gurus, everywhere. But one of the places she would have them is just behind where she had her water container. And she said that, that was beneficial for the quality of the water, and the she would do the hands-on work with the water before she would drink it. But I just thought it was a really nice thing that she had such devotion that she would treat the image of the gurus sanctified, and had the ability in her mind to make the water of higher quality before she drank it. So
yeah, I had a bout of doing that as well before my house refurbished. I had the SRF altar in front of my jug of water in my room. It was a good feeling, because then you drink the water with a lot of reverence as well.
Yeah, with the reverence,
which is always a good thing.
I remember at the events at Lake Shrine, maybe 10, 15 years ago, whenever they had a big event, they would have like an altar of the gurus there. And then in front of each of them, they would have a plate that was filled with food of the gurus. I always liked that. I haven't seen that recently, but those good memories.
But then are you supposed to take one of those plates, or are they just offerings to the gurus?
No, offerings. You don't take
Okay.
them.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that would be so. It's like, imagine the psychological
angst there,
trick they're
just-
playing. No, as in like, like in London Centre when a big event day, they just leave plates of food out. But imagine if they put them next to the guru's pictures, no one would ever take them. No one would ever take them.
Yeah, they shouldn't, right?
Yeah. So yeah, so the physical presence, Nalini is saying, would have made a big difference. There's some clues in the autobiography as to this not being the case. Lahiri Mahasaya in chapter 1 said that he often had written to those of his disciples who were over anxious to see him. He used to say, "Why come to view my flesh and bones when I am ever within range of your Kudashta, your spiritual sight?" Which is soul comforting, isn't it? For us who have to, with faith, meditate with our gurus. And then, of course, the material in chapter 34, the materializing the palace in the Himalayas chapter, Babaji said to Lady Mahashai, "Henceforth, my son, I shall come whenever you need me, not whenever, always, whenever you call me." There's obviously the backstory to that, but it's so in one example, Lady Mahashai is obviously not in its physical form, and we have to practice with faith. But with Babaji, we do know he is in this physical form somewhere, probably in some remote Himalayan crag. And he can, as this promise was made to Lady Mahashai, he would no doubt make it with us as well, and it would apply to us as well. So yes. So the brother-in-law says, he added tearfully that the doctors see no ray of hope, neither do I. And after this long bout of typhoid that she had, now it's time for blood dysentery, which is, if you don't know, it's where you leak blood in places that shouldn't be bleeding. It's not probably one of the worst conditions you can have, isn't it? Oh, I can imagine. And Mukunda, sorry, Swami Yogananda says next, "I tried to move heaven and earth with my prayers," which is interesting. There's two things that are interesting here. One, you know how she's saying if Mukunda, if Brother Mukunda was here, I wouldn't be faring this. She's not saying, "Why, God, why, why I don't deserve this," and all that stuff. She is putting a lot of faith in her brother, the avatar, and it's also an element of fearlessness, I thought, in putting all her eggs in this basket. And if it was like in the basket of some famous doctor, then you would say, that's misplaced. But doing it with an avatar, it kind of half makes sense, regardless of all the things we have discussed in the last few minutes. And dealing with illness and health and disease is something that's talked about in God Talks with Arjuna. One of the 26 ennobling qualities in chapter 16, verse 1 is number 1 is fearlessness. So Mike, would you like to start us off with that reading?
Illness also is a gauntlet tossed at the feet of faith. An ill person should try earnestly to rid himself of his malady. Then, even if doctors proclaim there is no hope, he should remain tranquil, for fear shuts the eyes of faith to the omnipotent, compassionate, divine presence. Instead of indulging anxiety, he should affirm, "I am ever safe in the fortress of thy loving care." A fearless devotee succumbing to an incurable disease concentrates on the Lord and becomes ready for liberation from the bodily prison into a glorious afterlife in the astral world. Thereby, he advances closer to the goal of supreme liberation in his next life. A man who dies in terror, having surrendered to despair, his faith in God and the remembrance of his immortal nature carries with him into his next incarnation that bleak pattern of fear and weakness. This imprint may well attract to him similar calamities, a continuation of a karmic lesson not yet learned. The heroic devotee, however, though he may lose the battle, with death, yet wins the war of freedom. All men are meant to realize that soul consciousness can triumph over every external disaster.
When subconscious fears repeatedly invade the mind, in spite of one's strong mental resistance, it is an indication of some deep-seated karmic pattern. The devotee must strive even harder to divert his attention by infusion of his conscious mind with thoughts of courage. Further, and most important, he should confide himself completely into God's trustworthy hands. To be fit for self-realization, man must be fearless.
There you go. So she is putting her faith in Swami Yogananda, and then by extension, of course, Swami Sri Yukteswar and Hare Mahasaya and Mahavtar Babaji and Bhagwan Krishna and Jesus Christ, of course. So it's a good nest egg. The next section is really about medicine versus, divine will power, and it says that Mukunda Swami Yogananda engaged an Anglo-Indian nurse. So this would probably is an Indian person that's trained in Western medicine, but who knows? Could be half Indian, half English. But an Anglo-Indian nurse who gave me full cooperation. I applied on my sister various yoga methods of healing. One wonders what the various yoga methods of healing are. There must be different types. Lesson 32 is entitled The Physical and Metaphysical Methods of Healing. And in that, he talks about how you can heal yourself, essentially, and of course others by extension. And he, interestingly, he categorizes it into 3 different areas. Naturally, you would say, the order that I would usually say is conscious, subconscious, and superconscious healing. But he has actually, in the order, I actually put subconscious first, and then conscious, and then superconscious. It's an interesting order because you'd assume that the conscious comes before the subconscious, and this kind of goes back to our psychology and Jung and all the things that Mike and I discussed in the past. But essentially, this section is about the use of affirmation. So I think he's talking about developing subconscious habits, and then they then enter your conscious frame, and then therefore if you marry the two, then you'll enter your super consciousness. This isn't written in the lessons. I'm just wondering why he's put it in that order. And in these techniques is essentially some very powerful affirmations. I'll give just one of them, which says, "Thou art life, thou art strength, thou art mind, thou art imagination, thought, fancy. I am thought, I am fancy. In every way, I am like thee, I am like thee. I am whole, I am like thee." So he says to practice that subconsciously, and then, like, for example, before going to sleep, and then, like, with your eyes upturned. And then he says to do it consciously as well, like in your, day-to-day life. And then he also says to do it in super consciously, i.e. doing it after a Kriya or after a Hongso or, Om techniques. So those are potentially the methods that he could have used here, but we obviously don't know. By doing this, he says in the autobiography that the blood dysentery vanished, which is a very good outcome. But Dr. Bose was still not happy. He said, "She has no more blood left to shed. It's not a healing, essentially." And then Mukunda, you can say, he said it stoutly, but it doesn't even need to write those words. He says, "She will recover. In 7 days, her fever will be gone." And this is the second time in this short episode that he's used such resolute, willpower. as a technique of healing. And I feel like that resoluteness, that staunchness, stoutness is really necessary for this to take effect.
7 days of fever is so crazy long, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's like it's amazing that she recovers from that, because I feel like when you have fever for a week or longer, then you are already in the realm where you're not sure if you will survive it.
Indeed.
I had fever for 2.5 days recently, and that was enough.
It's with she's obviously has some karma to burn. Like I think earlier in this chapter, he had a premonition, Ananta cannot live, the sands of his karma for this life have ran out. That's obviously not the case with Nalini, so she probably has to go through some, no doubt, some suffering, which is probably why this is here. A week later, good news. He was thrilled to see Nalini opened her eyes and gazed at Swami Yogananda with loving recognition. And then from that day, her recovery was speedy, and then she regained her usual weight, usual probably being the plumper version of herself. But she regained her usual weight, but she had one scar, which was that her legs were paralyzed. Quite shocking, isn't it? That typhoid and the fever of this intensity could give you paralysis. And then, so Indian and English specialists called her a hopeless cripple. You wouldn't use
Harsh.
you wouldn't use these, doctors wouldn't use these words anymore, would they?
Bedside manners come on a little bit.
But to be honest, I remember I told you in India, like the culture of like brazenness or brashness is like this.
I experienced that.
Oh, you did?
In India. Yeah. It's so crazy how they talk.
Yeah, so it's very direct. There's no rose, flowering language. There's no soothing of egos and sensitivity, sense of being sensitive. It's very even to the place where if someone's in a superior position, i.e. A police officer versus a member of public, a traffic officer versus you driving, he's like, he may be insanely rude to you unjustly, but you'll just take it because he's in a position of authority. Whereas in this case, even like in the UK, if an officer was being rude to you and they didn't have a just reason, you'd argue back, right? But in India, it's just no, you say what you are, just shut up. He'll say what he's gonna say, and there's no effect. It's not like an offense is taken. Like if this happened here, you'd write about it on Facebook, you tell your friends, you might start crying, all this stuff.
People are more sensitive, right?
Yeah. Whereas in India, that's just not the case. You can say whether or not that's it. You can make up your own mind on whether or not you think that's a good thing.
I just took it as if they talk to you as if you're a child. Go sit there. It's very directional.
How does it compare to Brazil?
You want to take a seat? Brazil is much more similar to the UK, and actually even more so. You have to explain everything a lot more, whereas they think the British people are a lot more rude because we wouldn't actually explain certain things like ourselves in certain circumstances. So people here think I'm rude.
Yeah. The Germany people are a bit more direct, so the German ways don't work that well in the UK. You have to adapt a little bit.
I've never seen you be rude though, Mike. Never.
Yeah, I also spent a lot of time in Austria. There people are a bit more, I don't know, a bit more like in the UK, a bit more sugarcoating things.
Yeah, I don't think it's a necessarily bad way to be, but my cousin who passed from stage 4 brain cancer, he was told by the nurse, I think it was at the time, that he had a very short time to live. And I remember his reaction was visceral. He spoke to me and he said, well, the research that I've done is between certain age groups, it is a death sentence within a matter of, weeks, months. but because he was young, he actually, through the research that he did, he basically thought he had a lot more time. And the long and short of the story was he was angry that she potentially stole the hope that he had, even though it was a death sentence in the end, stage 4 brain cancer. But he reacted very badly to that. So I think, regardless now of cultural, differences in how we speak, it is pertinent to give people that hope. I think, to try to ensure that they react, because placebo is a massive thing and we're very powerful beings, right?
But
So
I don't know. I would rather have the truth than something that is just a made up hope.
no, not you don't make up hope. I'm not saying that. But saying that you're going to die is also not that great.
Maybe not the right way of
Just,
phrasing it. Yeah, I agree with that.
There's
Yeah,
a halfway
sure.
house.
Yeah,
There's a halfway house.
yeah, absolutely.
You can give somebody
okay.
the statistics, let's say, but I think
that's what I
in
mean.
this
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
she's a hopeless cripple. You're kind of withdrawing the possibilities of a quote unquote miracle happening.
Doctors shouldn't do that. But yeah, they're very direct. And I think sorry.
Where I noticed that a lot, this kind of how you phrase things as with AI, because I know AI in the beginning, the LLMs, they were very direct and harsh, and now they phrase things in much nicer ways.
Yeah, so far. I thought you were just wasting characters. I can't be bothered for the line. Just tell me what I need to know.
It's like good point, even though it wasn't a good point.
That's a real the directness. I love how how polite and friendly the Irish are. Like in India, they'd say sit down, and in Ireland it would be like a proposition, question, optional. Will you not sit down? Will you not
sit down with me for a wee moment?
Come on, Mike. Where's your Irish accent?
No, non-existent. I have this permanent German accent on me. That's all I got.
Okay. So the next bit is a little bit serious. He says the incessant war for her life that I'd waged by prayer had exhausted me.
Wow, an avatar.
Which means that some kriyas and some techniques for healing are actually expenders of energy rather than a net gain, because we learn about kriya, and we're obviously going to learn about it more in the next chapter, but it's essentially you can live off prana, right? You can live for eternity, which means that you suspend and cease all decay, and so it's like the opposite of this. So Swami Yogananda's techniques here that he used must have been very, very powerful and exhausting.
I'd imagine part of it might
demanding.
There was probably a lot of emotions involved for him as well, which could be a very draining issue.
I wonder if it was all technique or if a lot of it was also just prayer to Divine Mother. And I feel like that's like spending your willpower.
Yeah. Because I think in the past he's also like had this tug of war with God, tug of war with God and Sri Yukteswar, isn't he? About various things like promising you'll reveal God to me and stuff. And similarly, he obviously would have been very adamant to God about Sister Nalini, testing his own faith as well as hers. Next section is an astral intercession, because where does he go next? He is exhausted. He has no more strength or sinew. So he goes, of course, to Shirampur and Sri Yukteswar for help. And lovingly, it says that Sri Yukteswar's eyes expressed deep sympathy when Swami Yogananda told him of her situation and plight.
That must be so comforting, because that really depends on the person as well, right? Like there's the story with this doctor who didn't want to be vegetarian, right? Who didn't believe in the bangles, and Sri Yukteswar wasn't so forthcoming there. But with his sister Nalini, he somehow feels the same kind of compassion that Swami Yogananda feels for his sister.
Indeed. The next thing that Sri Yukteswar says is, your sister's legs will be normal at the end of 1 month. Let her wear next to her skin a band with an unperforated 2-carat pearl held on by a clasp. Now, here's another. Remember just now I said about the 3 methods of healing, i.e. subconscious, conscious, and superconscious. The order is not the logical order. And here, again, the order is not logical, because if you are to ask me how I would write this from memory, I would have thought he would have said, get her to wear this 2-carat pearl, and then she will be well and healthy in a month. But he said, your sister's leg will be normal in a month. And then he said, let her wear next to her skin. So this is important because, as we'll find out later in this section, gurus don't need to use props and all right, and these various things that are usually for us and for our own faith, which is coming in later sections.
Yeah, I was gonna ask exactly that question. I remember in Outwitting the Stars, we were asking that question, if it's like proving our faith, that's why we're wearing it, or if it has an actual effect on us.
And it's about enhancing our own faith, isn't it? Because we need us mortals, we need tangibles, we need to touch and feel and see things rather than just rely on hearsay. Yeah. So this obviously had a profound impact on Swami Yogananda, and he got what he wanted, and he prostrated himself at the feet of Sri Yukteswar with joyful relief. Sir, you are a master, he says. Your word that she will recover is enough. But if you insist, I'll immediately get her a pearl. So yeah, so he knows in his mind that he doesn't need to get the pearl, but Sri Yukteswar said it, and of course then he definitely needs to do it because he said it.
But I remember the chapter with the sapphires, Sashi and the sapphires. Sashi was like, I don't have money for the sapphires. And then the healing wasn't happening, and then he had to beg for his healing later.
And in one of the paragraphs, was it not wear it or don't wear it? Your healing is, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact, but yeah. So it's yeah, it's a different situation. But I feel like this footnote will answer our conundrum. Yeah, but we'll get to that in a second. So Sri Yukteswar reaffirms, yes, do that. You got to get the pearl. And he went on to describe correctly the physical and mental characteristics of Nalini, whom, of course, he'd never seen. And Yogananda says, sir, is this an astrological analysis? You don't know her birthday or hour, which is required for regular astrologers, i.e. one that aren't an avatar or self-realized, where they also require exact time of birth, of course, but they also require latitude and longitude of the place of birth, which is key. And when they say date and hour, they need the exact time, so hour and time, because they use all those things to figure out what was happening. Yeah. Figure out what was happening and which stars were pointing in which direction and where you were in that whole geometry to determine how your life is going to pan out, which we've covered in past episodes. And then Sri Yukteswar smiles. He says, there is a deeper astrology not dependent on the testimony of calendars and clocks. Each man is part of the creator or cosmic man. He has a heavenly body as well as one of earth. I
Mm.
think so. That would mean that Sri Yukteswar is surveying or perceiving her astral and causal body through his all-seeing,
Mm.
all-knowing spiritual eye, Kutastha. And then he is like, he's almost downloading information as Swami Yogananda is saying all this stuff and then just describing it, as it is, describing her appearance, etc.
Mhm.
And then Swami Sri Yukteswar goes on and he says the human eye sees the physical, but the inner eye penetrates more profoundly, even to the universal pattern of which each man is an integral and individual part.
Mhm.
It's interesting that we are an integral part of the universal pattern. That is quite profound, isn't it? It just feels like, well, for me, it doesn't feel like my life is very significant. Yeah, compared to all the lives that are out there. But this is saying you are essentially, every man is integral to the whole equation of everyone's
Mm.
the universal pattern, which is I mean, it's not necessarily, like stuff supposed to like inflate your ego, but it's supposed to give, I think it's supposed to give you confidence and realization of like the part you're playing is a significant one.
Yeah, Yogananda talks about this in the lessons and simply says everybody therefore must do their very best because it is important to the grand scheme, to the grand play, which I suppose is the thing. You could be intimidated by that as well to some extent, but yeah, everybody must do their best in no matter what circumstance they're in to play their part, because we are, as it says here, integral
Mhm.
to the grander part.
So Mukunda Swami Yogananda writes, I returned to Calcutta and purchased a pearl for Nalini. In the past, as Mike said, it's been 3 sapphires. It's it's been in Outwitting the Stars, that was 2 jewels, and there was gold, copper, and silver that he asked someone to use, and he asked Swami Yogananda to use silver and lead in the past for a specific purpose. And then it was 2 carat blue sapphires for Shashi, as we said, 2 carat pearl for Nalini. So different horses for different courses. But yeah, it's important to note that it's not one size fits all in astrology. You have to wear what is supposed to be worn. So it's described here: pearls and other jewels, as well as metals and plants, when directly applied to human skin, exercise an electromagnetic influence over the physical cells. Man's body contains carbon and various metallic elements that are present also in plants, metals, and jewels. And the plant combinations, we've discussed this in the past, but are materials like tulsi, like rudraksh, sandalwood, and the jewels are the ones we've discovered. But the ultimate one is the Navaratna, and the Navaratna is the 9 stones or gems, and Sri Yukteswar, I believe that's the ultimate one. Probably cost $30,000 in today's prices.
Yeah,
But
if you have
most
real gems on them.
yeah. But the problem is we don't know the weights, because the weights are really important, and the purity and all that. So we don't know the equation for what what we know what the stones and jewels should be, but we don't know the equation as to their weight and size, etc. So you could spend all that money, and it may be fantastic, or it may not. It may be a waste of maybe a waste of money, a very expensive, good-looking bangle. Sorry, was it like a necklace type thing?
I know a few devotees who wear them.
Did they say it made like a difference?
I think so. Yeah.
Cool.
I think also the price was over double.
Yeah, the price is pretty
Yeah,
high. Yeah.
huge.
Oh, 60,000 now. Wow, that's what it was when I
Mhm.
last checked. Wow.
Mhm.
Shows how I'm getting old. Um, so it says how the discoveries of the rishis in these fields will doubtless receive confirmation someday from physiologists. Oh, that will be a fantastic day, won't it? Because then we will know the equation. And Sri
For the
Yukteswar used to
higher
wear one.
ages.
Yeah,
It's the higher ages, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's true. Yeah, so probably have to wait till another yuga.
Mm.
Man's sensitive body with electrical life currents is center of many mysteries as yet unexplored. Through jewels and metal bangles, though jewels and metal bangles have remedial values for the body, Sri Yukteswar had another reason for recommending them. And remember, we talked about needing something physical and tangible. So here, I think, is the explanation as to why he says these things. So, Mike, do you want to read this, I think, important bit out?
Masters never wish to appear as great healers. God alone is the healer. Saints therefore often cloak with various disguises the power they have humbly received from the Lord. Man usually puts his trust in tangibles. When persons came for healing to my guru, he advised them to wear a bangle or a jewel in order to arouse their faith and also to divert attention from himself. The bangles and jewels possessed, in addition to their intrinsic electromagnetic healing potencies, Master's hidden spiritual blessing.
So in
That's so
addition,
cool.
yeah, so it probably has some pull. So if you imagine the bangle itself, maybe the 1 out of 10, and then Sri Yukteswar's blessing grace might be the
Nine.
9 out of 10. So the 9 out of 10 will get you there, but the extra one might get there maybe slightly quicker, slightly less painful, maybe. I don't know. I'm just imagining. So a month later, her paralyzed legs were completely healed, and there was a very grateful Nalini, which is interesting that she had to endure a month of paralysis. So, you know, that heavy bout of typhoid fever, and then this paralysis. She suffered quite greatly, hasn't she? She's probably not that old, and she has suffered quite greatly. Probably she's
Yeah.
probably in her teens, late teens, I would imagine.
You think so? That young?
Because younger, Nalini's younger, right?
Yeah.
And Swami Yogananda at this time would have been in his
Just mid-20s.
early 20s. So she
Mhm.
either would have been 19 or 20 or 21 or something.
Mhm.
Would have been early in their marriage, I think.
Yeah.
So sister said, give my gratitude to Sri Yukteswar, which is interesting. You wouldn't, you or I, wouldn't we say, take me to Sri Yukteswar? I need to portray my thanks to myself. But she's asked, maybe she did, and she's doing this because she couldn't get there. Sri Yukteswar listened to the message in silence. But as Swami Yogananda was about to leave, he made a pregnant comment, pregnant being the operative word. Your sister has been told by many doctors that she can't have children. Please tell her that in a few years she'll give birth to 2 daughters. And this is like, I think it's like a bonus blessing, isn't it? We've
Feels like
already
it.
had the best blessing as health, overcoming health. And now this is like getting the blessing of fulfilling a noble desire to, have children. And he's kind of answered that unquestioned, like the hidden, her hidden desire to have children. She's kind of just answered it. So that's really nice. And some years later, apparently to Nalini's joy, she bore a girl, and in a few more years, another girl, another daughter. So a very beautiful, heartwarming end to this Nalini chapter. I don't think we get any more of Nalini in this book. And then, for whatever reason, we have a picture of Daya Mata in the end of this chapter. And it's a beautiful picture. It's a picture of her meditating in her her ochre robes with an ochre shawl, and she's in quite a blissful state of being. It says that she was in India and she's absorbed in meditation or in divine communion. And this was during her visit to India in 1968. And Mike and I were discussing, we don't know where it is, but we could guess that it could be in Ranchi Ashram, where there's Guruji's rooms and there's some, little courtyards and places, some openings that she could be meditating just outside his room, perhaps. We don't know, but if someone knows, that would be nice. They could tell us. And there's some quotes from her. It says that Yogananda Guruji taught us the way, not only by his words, but by divine example. Taught us the way, not only by his words and divine example, but by giving us the scientific methods of meditation. It is not possible to satisfy the soul's thirst merely by reading about truth. One must drink deep from the fountain of truth, God. Self-realization means just that, direct experience of God. Really, really nice, isn't it? I think she, more than probably most other writers, i.e. of Guruji's direct disciples, I think has connected to like what Guruji and how he writes and how he portrays his love through his writings. Because when you read Daya writings, it feels like Guruji could be saying some of those words in the same kind of language, doesn't it?
I think that's a good point. I think, I feel like a lot of his disciples, they have different qualities from Guruji. And you're right, like with her, when you hear her talks or you read her book, Only Love, there's so much love that she conveys. And you always feel like that she cares deeply about you. That is like something, the real feeling of a mother. Motherly aspect.
Yeah, I'm just musing over why the picture's actually here in this section of the Autobiography of a Yogi, and I wonder, just as a theory, if it is because this last sentence here, it says a true mother of compassion, as her name Daya implies. The theme of her life was loving God and sharing His love with all. And what we've just read, very impactful part of this chapter, was the compassion that Guruji had for his sister that moved Sri Yukteswar. And our Guru and the Param Guru's combined force and will brought about this beautiful ending, as we said, with Nalini going on to have health and children and so on. And that's really through compassion of the Gurus, isn't it? And the love that they had for her. So maybe this is the embodiment in some way. The connection might be there. Sri Dayamata's manifestation of that divine power.
In most of the Indian languages, and probably Sanskrit as well, the word Daya is used in everyday language. So, like if you have sympathy, or as mother of compassion, if you're feeling compassionate, then you have Daya. My wife is very much of this quality. I think a lot of women have that in abundance, don't they? So I often call her Daya, just out of this reverence. But this picture could also be in Garpa Road as well. We don't know. But if you want to hear more about us talking about the Amata, I'll put a link in Awake Minute 53. We spent a whole episode talking about the Amata and her background and some of her writings. So you can go through that if you so wish, but we won't cover more of her here. Because it's interesting you raise that point, Chris, because in the next chapter, the Science of Kriya Yoga, there's Rajasi Janakananda, a picture of him meditating at the end of that chapter. So he seemed to be going through the presidents in these couple of chapters, the first couple anyway. So the next thing that we should do is just really talk about our reflections on the chapter. That's the end of the chapter. I personally very much enjoyed hearing about each siblings and how the journey that they go through with Guruji. It's quite nice. It's very different, isn't it? Ananta's is very different to Nalini's, which is very different to Roma's. And of course, Sananda and Vishnu, we don't hear too much about, but in this book we've got to hear so far. And it's similar to, I think, all of us. We go through very various different journey and path to Guruji, don't we? Like, for example, at the start of my practices, at the start of my, registration to SRF and following the teachings, I was 99.9% only concerned with the techniques, not like the gurus and the lineage and personal relationship and meditating on Guruji on your, in the spiritual eye after meditation and all that stuff that is obviously critically important, because Guruji says it's Kriya plus devotion, but I used to just neglect the devotion part. And these little journeys and stories from the siblings allow us to re-emphasize the, that importance. But it was fun also exploring the Guruji's dalliances with Japan and his the reasons and the possibilities of him going there, or perhaps even settling there. It was also cool to see how his premonitions and telepathy and how he interwove affirmations and willpower with that. I think they were really strong examples for us.
Yeah. I would agree with what you said there, Prank. I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that devotional aspect towards your loved ones and the, I guess the power with that can bring to manifest, as Guruji did the healing, and he did that through his love and devotion. So it's really touching actually to go through it again. It's funny, when we looked at the expectations of the chapter, it probably wouldn't have been the thing that I would have come away with as a feeling, is the feeling of, that deep devotion and love they had towards each other as a group, as individuals and souls. So yeah, it's a nice sort of surprise takeaway. I would have thought more about the technical kind of stuff behind the power and how did he manage to do that and change the shape of the physical form and stuff. But yeah, the takeaway is definitely the intimate relationship and the love that they have with each other.
It's the end of the journey for Ananta here, and he's played a big role in the book so far. And he went from older brother to becoming devotee of Yogananda. And I'm sure in this next incarnation, he will continue his spiritual journey. And it was really great to have more insight. I mean, I know if you read Majda, you see a lot of the family dynamics in the Lal Ghosh household. But here in this book, this is like a rare insight. You see the life of Nalini, and you also see an example of someone who first she buries the hatchet with her brother, and then she is a very receptive devotee, and in the end she benefits greatly from her relationship to her guru brother.
Yeah, how Swami Yogananda conducted his healings was very different to how Sri Yukteswar, I think, achieved the same thing. I feel like Sri Yukteswar's methods that came at the end of this chapter were quite mathematical. Obviously, they had elements of devotion in them. He was very empathetic, wasn't he? And that's obviously a very big sign of devotion. But he was almost telling it as it is, and using objects and tangibles, as opposed to Guruji's just using pure, unreasonable devotion and pleading to God and gurus to save his sister. So yeah, it was a short and sweet chapter, wasn't it? But lots and lots of things in there that we took out, which is in stark contradistinction to the next chapter, the science of Kriya, the science of Kriya Yoga, which is going to, I don't even know, Mike, how we're going to do this because it's so in depth. We're obviously not
It is.
we're not obviously not qualified to speak much about it, but we can obviously share our experiences about reading it. It's going to be
Yeah,
tough.
and it still continues that pattern of one more story-driven chapter and one more deep chapter.
Oh yeah, true. He's
Yeah.
sandwiching. It's like a
Yeah.
feedback sandwich.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
Softens
God.
us up to be more
Mhm.
susceptible to heavier concept.
True. Because the next one is founding a school in Ranchi. After that, so
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's literally doing this. It's keeping us, because but that's the difficult thing with God Talks with Arjuna, isn't it? It's just it keeps
It's
like the theory just
only
it
deep.
just gets
Yeah.
going.
Yeah.
It's so hard. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Guruji does well for us in the autobiography.
Mhm.
Helps us get through it. Okay, thank you very much, Chris and Mike, and to listeners. We shall see you next time. Jai Guru, everyone.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.